If you've not been living under a rock, you've probably heard of mewing at some point. A lot of people make memes about it and kind of joke about it, but mewing is actually a really effective method you can use to improve your overall facial appearance and bone structure. Over the last few months, I used mewing combined with a few other exercises to help me change my jaw and especially my side profile from this point to this. This is the difference that proper tongue posture can make if you do it properly over the course of a few months. So what I want to cover in this video is how and why mewing actually works to improve your bone structure. Then we'll cover how you can properly start mewing yourself. And then finally we'll cover methods I've used to keep doing it consistently all day, every single day. So to understand how and why mewing works to develop your skull properly, we need to understand the concept of joint suture theory. So what it essentially is a theory that explains how it's possible for new bone to be grown around anywhere in your body, including your skull. So the way it works is, around your skull you have something called sutures, which are kind of like cracks around your skull. So whenever you see a picture of a skull, you'll see these lines around it, and these are sutures. Now the thing about them is that around these sutures is where new bone mass can be grown. So this is possible due to a bunch of different cells that exist at those sutures. For example, you have osteoblasts at osteogenic fronts, osteocytes in new bone, fibroblasts and ligamentous cells in the suture mesenchyme, osteoclasts for remodeling, and other ones involved in the process. Now, these sutures can only start to grow new bone at the condition that proper pressure is applied on them. And whenever you apply enough pressure on them, you will cause a process called mechanotransduction to occur. So this is the process where mechanical forces are turned into cellular signals. So whenever pressure or mechanical force is applied on those sutures, you get cellular signals, which are signals to those sutures to grow new bone. So the only way that new bone can be grown is whenever there's a mechanical stimulus or pressure applied on the suture. So to give you a broad recap, around your skull you have sutures. Around these sutures, it's possible to have new bone growth. Now, in order to have new bone growth, you need to apply enough pressure on these sutures. So when you apply pressure on these sutures, you'll send signals to them to start the process of growing new bone mass. So hopefully this already helps you understand how mewing could potentially be useful for achieving better craniofacial development. So we understand that we need mechanical stimuli to grow new bone. So what can actually serve as a mechanical stimulus for growth? Which things can we do to cause mechanotransduction to occur? Well, we have four main things. Firstly, we have the act of keeping your lips sealed and breathing through your nose, especially at night. This will maintain your tongue upwards, remove mechanical stimuli that push your jaw to develop backwards, and keep your sutural strain oriented properly. Secondly, we have proper bilateral chewing or chewing equally on both sides of your mouth. So essentially, whenever you chew and put pressure on your jaw muscles and bones, you stimulate the remodeling of your zygomaticomaxillary buttress and your nasomaxillary buttress, and you also keep their ability to change open for longer. So basically, chewing foods helps you change the shape of your skull slightly, and it also helps keep those sutures open for longer so you can change your skull for longer. Then thirdly, what you can do is fix your swallowing mechanics. Most people swallow their food improperly and therefore over time change their facial structure negatively. And yes, it matters because on average people swallow about 500 to 700 times a day. And these are each an opportunity to put proper pressure on your craniofacial sutures. And then finally, the one that I've obviously kept for last is keeping your tongue pressed against the roof of your mouth, otherwise called mewing. So your tongue will create pressure on your sutures, and over time, with light but consistent pressure, your skull will change shape and grow new bone, and this is why mewing works to develop your skull properly. Your tongue will act as the mechanical stimulus, which will therefore allow your sutures to start the process of growing new bone, and over time, if you mew properly and consistently, your skull will improve its shape. So we understand that mewing serves as the mechanical stimulus for your skull to develop properly. What we now need to understand is how to do it the correct way. So this is something that many people do wrong, hence why they're not seeing proper results and why they believe mewing doesn't work. So when it comes to mewing properly, there's two things you need to understand. Firstly, you need to understand how to have proper technique and how to press your tongue on the palate of your mouth properly, because if you don't get it right, you'll probably get very few benefits from it. And then secondly, you need to understand how to do it consistently every day and all day long. Adapting the shape of your skull requires very small but very consistent pressure to change, which is why you need to learn how to mew consistently throughout the day. So this is also why I'm not a big fan of thumb pulling. With thumb pulling, you apply a lot of pressure for a small amount of time on those sutures, which is not ideal for your skull's development. So in the following two sections, I'm going to show you exactly how to both learn to mew properly and also how to learn to do it consistently over time. So the first thing you need to learn is learn to press your tongue properly on the roof of your mouth. So many people get this wrong in some way or another, which causes them to only get a fraction of the results. So first of all, what exactly is proper tongue posture? Well, it's when your tongue is fully pressed against the roof of your mouth, especially the back end. So this last part is what is most important and will give you most of the results, and this is also the place that people get their tongue in the least. Oftentimes, what will happen is that people get the first third or two-thirds of their tongue pressed on the palate of their mouth, but never that last third. So mewing is essentially when your complete tongue is pressed against the roof of your mouth, not just the first third or first two-thirds. So what I'm going to do now is walk you through a few exercises or methods you can use to get your tongue in the proper position, and I'm going to try to explain them as best as I can. So the first technique you can use is to swallow your saliva. What you'll realize when you do this is that your tongue will tend to push your saliva down your throat. So I want you to pay attention to where your tongue naturally goes when you swallow. Anytime you get to the peak of your swallow, your tongue should be pressed against your palate. So what I want you to do is anytime you get to that last bit, keep your tongue in that position. This should be the proper tongue posture. You need to keep your tongue in all day long. So try it a few times until you start to feel it well. Now, the second method you can use is to progressively apply your tongue on the roof of your mouth. So what you want to do is start by placing just the tip of your tongue against the area right behind your upper front teeth. Then you want to gradually work backwards, pressing more of your tongue surface against the roof of your mouth section by section. Think of it like painting the ceiling of your mouth with your tongue, which ensures that you have full contact from the front to the back. So try to cover more and more of your palate and try to get as far back as possible. Now, the third technique you can use is to make the sound NG. So you could say king or sing or any other word that ends in NG and put an emphasis on that last part. So what you'll realize when you do this is that your tongue should be pressed fully or almost fully against the roof of your mouth when you do this. So this is again where your tongue should be at. So if you use these methods or a few of these methods, you should be able to get your tongue in the proper position. Try swallowing and holding your tongue in that final position, progressively cover more and more of your palate, and pronounce the sound NG from king or sing, for example. Now, in the previous section, we've covered what a proper tongue posture actually meant and how you could get your tongue in the right position. What you'll now probably realize is that it's very difficult to keep your tongue in that position, especially if you never really did it before. You'll generally feel a very strong burn underneath your jaw, and that can really mess up your ability to do it consistently throughout the day. So if you want to keep proper tongue posture 24/7, the first thing you'll need to do is strengthen your hyoid muscles, which I made a complete video about. Basically, what you need to understand is that whenever you mew, you'll activate these muscles continuously, and if they're not used to being trained, they'll burn really hard. So the first thing you need to do is to train your suprahyoid and infrahyoid muscles so that they strengthen over time and therefore allow you to mew for hours on end. So as I said, I made a complete video about this explaining it in detail, but to recap, you'll need to combine two main movements, supine chin raises and resisted jaw openings. Both will help you strengthen those muscles and therefore over time allow you to mew more and more consistently. You can also use hard mewing, where you press your tongue against the roof of your mouth as hard as you can and keep it there for 2 to 3 minutes in a row. This is not meant to grow your face forwardly or develop your skull, but to simply strengthen those muscles underneath your jaw and get them used to being in that elevated position. So the first prerequisite of mewing every single day, all day long, is to have strong enough hyoid muscles. And again, I made a complete video about it so you can check it out. Now, secondly, you need to understand how to do it consistently over time. So once your hyoid muscles are strong enough, what you'll tend to realize is that your biggest problem isn't feeling a strong burn underneath your jaw, but simply the fact that you forget about mewing. In the very beginning, mewing won't be your usual tongue position, and so whenever you don't consciously think about mewing, your tongue will tend to go back down to its usual position. So in order to solve that, there's different methods you can use, but none of them were really that effective. The only thing that I found to be effective is keeping something in your mouth that reminds you to keep your tongue in the proper position. So in this case, what I did is I bought a mewing ring by Brett Maverick, and I found that to be really helpful. Now, I have no affiliation with him whatsoever. I just like the product, and it's the only thing that I found to help me keep my tongue in the proper position. So if you can find something else that allows you to keep proper tongue posture, perfect. But personally, that's the only thing that I found to be effective. So if you want to keep consistent good tongue posture throughout the day, strengthen your hyoid muscles first, and then use something to remind you to mew all day long. So this is pretty much all I have for this video. Understand that mewing does work due to your skull sutures, and you will see most of the results from mewing lightly but consistently throughout the day. So thank you for watching the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Go and watch the other video I made about training your hyoid muscles properly because you'll need it to mew consistently all day long. Peace.